Hi, I'm John Hornick. Welcome to my Impress Your Date lesson on how to make beef stew. If you're like me, you love beef stew, and if my date made this recipe for me, I sure would be impressed. We're going to be using a slow cooker to make this beef stew. The brand name is Crock-Pot. It's really an electric brazier. You could also make this recipe using a Dutch oven in your oven set at about 250 degrees, but we're going to be using the slow cooker today. Sure hope you like this recipe, and I'm confident it will impress your date. So let's start cooking. Okay, today we're going to make killer beef stew to impress your date. We're going to start off by blanching some bacon. So put it on medium-high heat. We're going to put 4 strips of bacon into this saucepan of water, bring it to a boil, and then let them simmer for about 5 to 10 minutes. Okay, the bacon's just come to a boil, so we're going to reduce the heat down to low. Let it simmer about 5 to 10 minutes. Okay, we blanched our bacon. Now we're going to cut it up into pieces that are about, the width of the bacon and about a ½ an inch wide. Why do we blanch it? It removes excess fat, and also it makes the bacon a little less bacony. Why would we want that? Well, bacon's very powerful, right? So we don't want the bacon flavor to overpower the stew. Okay, we're going to saute the bacon in this large skillet. Now, you might look at that skillet and say, that doesn't look clean, and you'd be right. I used this skillet to sear some lamb chops, and I didn't clean the pan before doing this. Why? That creates something called insaporire, an Italian term. It means the layering of flavors. So, of course, you can certainly use a clean pan, a clean skillet to do this, but I'm adding flavor by using the same pan that I used to sear those lamb chops. So we're just going to saute this bacon until it's about 3/4 cooked. Okay, these are about as cooked as I'd like them to be. We do not want them to be brown and crispy. Okay, now we're going to take these off the heat and add them to the slow cooker. And I'm using a slotted spoon so I can keep that oil in the pan, because we're going to need that to do the next steps. Okay, here's our stew beef. These are fairly large chunks. I could cut them up in smaller pieces, but you know, the longer you cook this, the softer the beef gets, and then it starts to fall apart. So if you want to be left with some chunks, start with larger chunks. We want the beef to be dry. And you know, I don't use many paper towels because I try to keep my carbon footprint a little bit smaller, but we're going to use them here. Try to dry this beef as much as we can. All right, now we want to season our beef. Nice sprinkling of salt, kosher salt. Freshly ground black pepper. And I think they need a little bit better coverage of pepper. And if they need better coverage of pepper, they probably also need better coverage of salt. Okay, next we're going to dredge them in flour. So we have a bowl of flour here. And let's just toss them in the flour. Now, I don't want a lot of excess flour, so I'm going to take them back out of the flour, shaking off the extra flour, and put them back onto the sheet pan. Okay, now we're going to brown the beef in that same skillet that we used to saute the bacon. Put it on medium heat. Bring our skillet back on. Add a little olive oil. Let it get hot. Okay, we're just starting to get some whiffs of smoke off of the pan, which means that we're ready to go. Now, unfortunately, I had to turn on the fan, so it may be a little hard to hear. But we're going to give some separation between these pieces of beef in the pan. If they're too close together, they won't brown as well, they'll steam. So keep some space. We're going to do them in batches. We just want to get a nice brown on the outside. Okay, I think we have a nice brown all around on these pieces. We're going to take these out and do the next batch. If you need to add more oil, add a little oil and then give it just a few seconds to heat up because the pan's pretty hot. Okay, here's our nicely browned beef, which I was able to do in 3 batches. I'm going to add that to the slow cooker. Okay, now we're going to brown our mirepoix, which is another French term for onions, celery, and carrots. We're just going to start them a little bit at a time. We don't want them to get too crowded either, or they will steam more than they'll brown. Lightly season them with salt and freshly ground black pepper. Okay, here's our first batch, nicely browned, and they smell great. We're going to remove them from the pan and do the next batch, adding a little bit more oil. Okay, so we're on the third and last batch of the mirepoix. We're going to add the garlic now to this batch, and we're going to watch it carefully because garlic burns easily and quickly. Okay, here's our nicely browned mirepoix. We're going to add that to the slow cooker. And then we're going to turn it on to low and cover it. Okay, next we're going to blister our cherry tomatoes. A little salt and pepper. Okay, our cherry tomatoes are nicely blistered. We're going to add those to the slow cooker. Now we're going to deglaze that pan with brandy or cognac. Flame it. Be very careful doing this. Oops, evaporated before it flamed, which is fine. Add a little bit of dry sherry. Cook that till it's almost dry. While it's cooking, scrape off the bits in the bottom of the pan. That's called the fond, F-O-N-D. Now we're going to add chicken stock, the bouquet garni, which has fresh thyme, bay leaves, and parsley stems. White wine. We're going to let that reduce until it's close to dry. Okay, we're reduced down to, it's not dry, but it's about maybe 1/8 of an inch of the liquid left in the bottom of the pan. We're going to add the red wine, about a teaspoon of Worcestershire sauce, and about a teaspoon of anchovy paste. Stir that around a little bit. Now what we want to do is bring this wine to a boil, and then we're just going to let it simmer for a little while to burn off the alcohol. I don't really want it to reduce. Okay, the wine's come to a boil. We're going to turn it down low. I want to burn off the alcohol, but I don't really want it to reduce in volume. We'll let that go for about 5 minutes. Okay, we're going to add the red wine to the slow cooker along with the bouquet garni. We want the wine just to cover the vegetables. Perfect. You know, if it doesn't quite cover the vegetables, that's fine. These vegetables are going to render some liquid as they cook, but we're starting off here with just having them covered. Cover that up. Now we're going to come back in 4 hours. Okay, now we're going to sweat the mushrooms, or I should say saute the mushrooms. We're going to doing this while the slow cooker is doing its thing. Now again, we don't want to crowd the mushrooms. Julia Child said, don't crowd the mushrooms, because then they will they'll steam and they won't brown. Okay, all of our mushrooms are nicely browned. We're going to remove those and we're going to hold them until about an hour before we finish cooking the stew. All right, next thing we're going to do is brown our potatoes. Now, I'm using these small potatoes, come in different colors, yellow, red, and they're perfect size. I'm not even going to peel them. And now, if you want to use other potatoes, fine. Just cut them into chunks about this size, which is about 3/4 of an inch square. Give them a little seasoning. And the idea here isn't to cook the potatoes through, it's to char them a little bit on the outside. Okay, our potatoes are a little bit browned and blistered on the outside. That's exactly what we want. We're going to remove those from the pan and we're going to hold those until about 2 hours before the stew is finished. So when we come back and check it after that 4-hour mark, we're going to add the potatoes and they will cook through during that remaining 2-hour period. The stew has been slow cooking for 4 hours. We're going to add those potatoes. Remember, they were not cooked potatoes, they were just kind of blistered and a little browned on the outside. So we're going to put them in there and they're going to cook in the remaining time, which is 2 more hours. But we're going to come back in an hour and put those mushrooms in. Okay, we're up to hour 5. It's bubbling away nicely. We're going to add the shrooms and mix it up a little bit. I also want to see how the beef is doing. Let's take a piece of beef. Oh yeah, it's falling apart, fall apart tender, perfect. Okay, we're gonna let it go another hour. Okay, let's taste it. Excellent. Now, this would be the time that we would adjust the seasoning if it needed any more salt or pepper, but it doesn't. So we're going to leave it just the way it is. Now we're going to plate up. We're going to try to get a nice mixture of the goodies, the beef, the vegetables, the potatoes, mushrooms, and some of the liquid as well. This stew is, I think, pretty much self-thickening, so I don't add any flour to thicken it up. You might find that the next day, if you have leftovers, that you are a little light on liquid. What you can do at that point is add some beef stock. There's a no salt added beef stock you can get. I don't know what the brand is. Or you could add chicken stock, or you can even add water. All right, so that is the killer beef stew recipe. I will serve it with some crusty bread and maybe a salad, and that is sure to impress your date. Thanks for watching, and please remember to subscribe to my channel.